The old clock on the hotel kitchen wall showed 6:30 p.m. when Maya hurried through the staff entrance, still catching her breath from running 3 blocks. She had just finished her shift at the grocery store and barely had time to change into her server uniform. The black dress was a bit too big for her small frame, but it was clean and that's all that mattered at the Grand Plaza Hotel. "You're cutting it close again," whispered Rosa, her supervisor, as Maya tied her apron. "Tonight's the big corporate dinner. 300 guests, all important people. Don't mess this up." Maya nodded, pushing a loose strand of dark hair behind her ear. At 16, she had been working part-time jobs for 2 years now. Every dollar helped pay for her mother's medicine and their small apartment rent, school during the day, grocery store in the afternoon, and hotel catering in the evenings. It was exhausting, but Maya never complained. Her mother had sacrificed everything for her, and now it was her turn to help. The ballroom was magnificent that evening. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over round tables covered in white cloth. Fresh flowers filled the air with a sweet smell, and soft jazz music played from hidden speakers. Maya had served at many events, but this one felt different. The guests wore expensive suits and jewelry that probably cost more than her family, made in a year. She balanced a tray of water glasses carefully as she moved between tables. Maya had learned to be invisible at these events. Rich people didn't really see the servers anyway. She was just part of the background, like the music or the flowers. "Excuse me, miss," called an elderly woman at table 12. "Could you bring more bread?" "Of course, ma'am," Maya replied with a smile, even though her feet were already aching in her worn-out shoes. As she turned to head back to the kitchen, Maya noticed a man sitting alone at a corner table. He looked to be in his early 50s, with graying hair and kind eyes. Unlike the other guests who were laughing loudly and making business deals, this man seemed quiet, almost sad. He kept checking his phone and looking toward the entrance as if waiting for someone who never came. Maya felt sorry for him. She knew what it was like to feel alone in a room full of people. The evening went smoothly until disaster struck during the main course service. Maya was carrying a tray with 8 glasses of ice water when someone at table 5 suddenly stood up and backed right into her path. There was no time to stop. The tray tilted, and cold water went everywhere. "Oh no," Maya gasped as water splashed across the man's expensive navy suit. It was the same quiet man from the corner table. Now he was standing, water dripping from his jacket, with everyone in the nearby table staring at them. Maya's heart sank. She was going to lose her job for sure. "I'm so sorry, sir. I'm really, really sorry," Maya said, grabbing napkins from the nearest table. Her hands were shaking as she tried to help dry his suit, but she was only making it worse. The man looked down at his wet clothes, then at Maya's panicked face. Instead of getting angry like she expected, he smiled gently. "It's okay," he said in a calm voice. "Accidents happen. Don't worry about it." But Maya was already close to tears. This job meant everything to her family. "Please don't complain to my manager. I need this job. My mom is sick and we need the money for her medicine." As she dabbed at his jacket with the napkin, something caught her eye. On his left hand was a silver ring, but not an ordinary wedding band. This one had tiny musical notes carved all around it, so detailed and beautiful that it looked like artwork. The design was unusual, with treble clefs and small instruments etched into the metal. Maya stopped moving. She stared at the ring, her mouth slightly open in surprise. That's such a beautiful ring," she said without thinking. The man looked down at his hand, seeming surprised that she had noticed. "Thank you, it's quite old actually." "Hi, sir," Maya said, her voice getting excited despite the water still dripping from his suit. "My mother has a band just like yours, but—" She stopped suddenly. What was she doing? This was crazy. She couldn't just start talking to a guest about her mother's old jewelry, but there was something about the ring that made her heart race. The design was so specific, so unusual. Her mother had shown her a similar ring many times, always with tears in her eyes and stories about the past that never made complete sense. "What about your mother's ring?" the man asked. and Maya noticed his voice had changed. He sounded more interested now, almost urgent. Before Maya could answer, she heard heavy footsteps behind her. What's going on here? It was Mr. Peterson, the hotel manager, and he looked angry. I spilled water on this gentleman, Maya said quickly. It was an accident. Miss Chen, you need to be more careful, Mr. Peterson said, his face red with embarrassment. I'm so sorry, sir, she's new. I'll have her removed from the event immediately. No, wait, the man said, holding up his hand. It really was just an accident, no harm done. But Mr. Peterson was already grabbing Maya's arm. Come on, you're done for tonight. Please, Maya said, looking back at the man with the musical ring. I'm really sorry about your suit. As Mr. Peterson pulled her away, Maya heard the man call out, What were you going to say about your mother's ring? But it was too late. Maya was being pushed through the kitchen doors, away from the ballroom and the mysterious man whose ring looked exactly like the one her mother kept hidden in an old jewelry box. In the staff room, Maya sat on a plastic chair, while Mr. Peterson paced back and forth. Maya, you're a good worker, but tonight was unacceptable. The Grand Plaza has a reputation to maintain. I know, sir, I'm really sorry. It won't happen again. Mr. Peterson sighed. I'm not firing you, but you're suspended for 1 week. No pay. Maya's heart sank. A week without pay meant her mother would have to skip some of her medicine again, but she just nodded and changed out of her uniform in silence. As she walked home through the dark streets, Maya couldn't stop thinking about the man and his ring. Her mother had always been secretive about her past, especially about Maya's father. All Maya knew was that he had left before she was born, and her mother never wanted to talk about him. But that ring, Maya had seen her mother looking at a similar one late at night when she thought Maya was sleeping. She would take it out of the jewelry box, hold it up to the light, and sometimes cry quietly. When Maya asked about it once, her mother had quickly put it away and said it was nothing important. Now Maya wondered if it really was nothing or if there was a story her mother had never told her. A story about a man with kind eyes who wore musical notes on his finger and seemed just as lonely as her mother often looked when she thought no one was watching. The walk home took 30 minutes, but Maya barely noticed the time passing. Her mind was full of questions that had no answers, and a strange feeling that tonight had changed something important, even though she didn't understand what or how. When she finally reached their small apartment, her mother was waiting up for her, as always with a warm cup of tea and a gentle smile that made everything feel a little bit better. David Harrison couldn't sleep that night. He sat in his luxury penthouse apartment still wearing the damp shirt from the evening's event, staring at the silver ring on his finger. The girl's words kept playing in his mind like a broken record. My mother has a band just like yours, but what? What was she going to say before the manager dragged her away? At 52 years old, David was used to getting answers to his questions. As the CEO of Harrison Tech, one of the biggest technology companies in the country, he had resources that most people could only dream of. But tonight, a teenage waitress had left him with a mystery that money couldn't immediately solve. He picked up his phone and called his assistant Tony, even though it was almost midnight. Mr. Harrison, is everything okay? Tony's sleepy voice answered. I need you to find out about a girl who worked at tonight's event at the Grand Plaza. Young, maybe 16, dark hair. Her last name is Chen. The manager called her Maya. There was a pause. Sir, is there a problem? Should I contact legal? No, nothing like that. Just find out what you can about her and her family. Quietly, David hung up and walked to his window, looking down at the city lights below. 20 years ago, he had been a different person. Young, passionate, and deeply in love with a woman who had dreams as big as his own. But he had made choices back, then terrible choices that he regretted every single day. The next morning, Tony arrived at David's office with a thin folder. Her full name is Maya Chen. She's 16, honor student at Lincoln High School. Lives with her mother, Elena Chen, in apartment 4B at Riverside Commons. The girl works 3 part-time jobs, grocery store, hotel catering, and weekend babysitting. David opened the folder and studied Maya's school photo. She had Elena's eyes and smile, But there was something else familiar about her face that made his chest tighten. "What about the mother?" he asked. "Elena Chen, 36 years old. Works part-time at a flower shop downtown. She has arthritis in her hands, takes regular medication for it. No husband listed on any documents. Maya's birth certificate shows father as unknown." David's hands were shaking as he turned the page. There, in the folder, was an old newspaper clipping from 15 years ago. The headline read, "Local jazz musicians perform at summer festival." The photo showed several people on stage, and there, holding a microphone with a beautiful smile, was Elena Rodriguez, not Elena Chen. Elena Rodriguez, the woman he had loved and lost 20 years ago. David's world stopped. He stared at the photo, remembering that exact performance. He had been in the audience that night, watching the woman he planned to marry sing with her band. She had worn the engagement ring he gave her, the one that matched his own. But 3 days later, everything changed. His phone rang, snapping him back to reality. "David, we need to talk about the merger," his business partner's voice said through the speaker. But David wasn't listening. He was calculating dates in his head. Maya was 16. Elena had been 20 when they broke up. The timing was right. The fear in his stomach grew stronger. "Cancel my meetings for today," David told Tony. "I need to do some research." For the next several hours, David dove into Elena's history. He found records of her name change from Rodriguez to Chen, probably to hide from her past. He discovered that she had stopped performing music around the same time that Maya was born. Her band had been getting attention from record labels, but suddenly Elena disappeared from the music scene entirely. David remembered Elena's dreams. She wanted to be a professional singer, to travel the world sharing her music. She was talented enough to make it happen. So why did she give it all up? The answer was becoming clear, and it terrified him. That evening, David drove to Riverside Commons. It was a rundown apartment complex on the poor side of town, nothing like the neighborhoods where David usually spent his time. He sat in his expensive car, watching the building where Maya and Elena lived. Through a third-floor window, he could see a woman moving around in a small kitchen. Even from this distance, and after 20 years, he recognized Elena's graceful movements. She was cooking dinner, probably waiting for Maya to come home from work. David's memory took him back to their tiny apartment when they were young. Elena would cook simple meals while humming songs she was writing. He would sit at their small table watching her move around their kitchen, feeling like the luckiest man alive. They had no money, but they had each other and their dreams. Then, his father had offered him the chance to take over the family business. "You can't build an empire with a struggling musician, son," his father had said. "Choose wisely. This opportunity won't come again." David had chosen the business. He had chosen money over love, success over family. He told Elena that their relationship was holding him back, that he needed to focus on his career. The hurt in her eyes still haunted him. What he didn't know until now was that Elena might have been pregnant when he left her. His phone buzzed with a text message. It was Tony with more information. Found Elena's medical records from 2008. She gave birth to Maya Chen on March 15th. The father's information was left blank. David did the math again. March 2008. That meant Elena got pregnant in June 2007. He and Elena had broken up in August 2007. The timeline matched perfectly. Maya was his daughter. David sat in his car for 2 hours watching the apartment building. He saw Maya come home around 9 o'clock, walking slowly like she was tired. Even from the street, he could see that she looked sad. He remembered Tony mentioning that she had been suspended from her hotel job. His daughter was working 3 jobs to take care of her sick mother, and it was his fault. If he hadn't abandoned Elena, she wouldn't have had to raise Maya alone. She wouldn't have had to give up her music career. She wouldn't be living in a rundown apartment struggling to pay for medicine. David thought about all the years he had missed. Maya's first steps, her first day of school, birthdays, Christmas mornings. He had been building his empire while his daughter was growing up without knowing he existed. The guilt was overwhelming, but underneath it was something else. Hope. He had a daughter. A smart, hard-working, beautiful daughter who seemed to have inherited Elena's strength and determination. But what could he do now? He couldn't just walk up to their door and announce who he was. Elena had clearly never told Maya about him, which meant she probably hated him. And rightfully so. As David finally drove away from Riverside Commons, he made a decision. He couldn't undo the past, but maybe he could help their future. He would find a way to make things better for Maya and Elena, even if they never knew it was him helping them. But first, he needed to figure out how to approach Elena. After 20 years of silence, what could he possibly say to the woman whose life he had destroyed? How could he explain that he had spent every day regretting his choice to leave her? And most importantly, how could he convince her to let him be part of Maya's life when he had already proven that he wasn't worthy of being anyone's father? The answers to these questions would have to wait. But David knew one thing for certain. He wasn't going to abandon his family again. This time he would fight for them, even if it took everything he had. 3 days passed before David found the courage to call Elena. He had written and thrown away dozens of letters, practiced countless speeches in his mirror, and even drove to her neighborhood twice without getting out of his car. How do you approach someone whose life you destroyed 20 years ago? Finally, he decided on a simple approach. He would pretend to be someone else, at least at first. "Elena Chen?" he said when she answered the phone. "Yes. Who is this?" Her voice was older, now tired in a way that hadn't been there when they were young, but it was definitely Elena. "This is Robert Williams from the Henderson Foundation. We provide educational scholarships for deserving students. Your daughter, Maya, has been recommended to us." There was a long pause. A scholarship? Maya didn't apply for any scholarships. Sometimes we reach out directly to students who show exceptional promise. "Would you be available to meet tomorrow afternoon? I'd like to discuss the opportunities available for Maya." Elena hesitated. I work tomorrow afternoon. Perhaps we could meet at the coffee shop near your workplace. Lily's Cafe on 5th Street. I could be there at 2 p.m. "Okay," Elena said slowly, "but I can only stay for 30 minutes. David's hands were shaking when he hung up. After 20 years, he was going to see Elena again. The next day, David arrived at Lily's Cafe an hour early. He chose a corner table where he could see the entrance and ordered coffee he didn't drink. His expensive suit felt wrong in the small, cozy cafe. Everything about this felt wrong, but he had to know the truth. At exactly 2 p.m., Elena walked through the door. Time seemed to stop. She was still beautiful, but David could see how life had been hard on her. Her dark hair now had streaks of gray, and there were lines around her eyes that spoke of worry and exhaustion. She moved more carefully than she used to, probably because of the arthritis Maya had mentioned. Elena looked around the cafe uncertainly. When her eyes met David's, the color drained from her face. "No," she whispered, backing toward the door. "No, this can't be happening." David stood up quickly. "Elena, please don't leave. You—" Elena's voice was shaking with anger. "You're the scholarship person? How dare you trick me into coming here?" Several other customers turned to look at them. Elena's hands were clenched into fists at her sides, and for a moment David thought she might hit him. "Please sit down," David said quietly. "Let me explain." "Explain what?" "How you disappeared from my life 20 years ago. How you told me I was holding you back. How you chose your precious career over everything we had together." Elena's voice was getting louder. The cafe owner looked concerned. "Elena, please, people are staring. Just give me 5 minutes." Elena looked around and noticed the attention they were drawing. She sat down across from him, but kept her purse clutched tightly in her lap like she was ready to run. "5 minutes?" she said coldly. "Then I'm leaving and I never want to see you again." David's prepared speech disappeared from his mind. Looking at Elena's angry face, all he could think about was how much he had hurt her. "Maya is my daughter, isn't she?" he said quietly. Elena's eyes filled with tears, but her voice stayed strong. "You have no right to ask me that." "She has my eyes, Elena." And when she mentioned her mother's ring that looked like mine, David held up his left hand, showing the musical notes carved into the silver band. "You kept yours, didn't you?" after all these years. Elena's hand unconsciously went to her neck, where David could see the outline of a chain under her shirt. That doesn't prove anything, she said, but her voice was weaker now. The timing fits. Maya was born in March 2008. We were together in June 2007. Stop. Elena's voice broke. Just stop. Why didn't you tell me? If you were pregnant when I left, why didn't you say something? Elena laughed, but it was a bitter sound. Tell you what, that your mistake was going to have a baby? You made it very clear that I was ruining your life. You said I was too needy, too emotional, too much trouble for a successful businessman. David remembered that terrible fight. He had said those words, and they had been lies even then. His father had pushed him to break up with Elena, saying she would hold him back. But the words had come from David's mouth, and Elena had believed them. I was wrong, David said. I was young and stupid and scared. My father convinced me that I had to choose between you and success. I thought I was making the smart choice. Well, congratulations, Elena said, wiping her eyes with a napkin. You got your success. You're a billionaire now, right? Was it worth it? David looked at her tear-stained face and thought about all the empty years in his penthouse apartment, all the meaningless business dinners, all the nights he had looked at his ring and wondered what would have happened if he had chosen differently. No, he said honestly. It wasn't worth it. Not a single day of it was worth losing you. Elena stared at him for a long moment. You don't get to say that now. You don't get to come back after 20 years and act like you're sorry. Do you know what my life has been like? Do you have any idea what it's like to raise a child alone while watching your dreams disappear? Tell me, David said. I want to know. I was going to be somebody. Elena's voice cracked. The record label was interested in our band. We were going to tour, maybe make an album, but then you left and I found out I was pregnant and everything changed. She pulled a tissue from her purse and dabbed at her eyes. I couldn't travel with a baby. I couldn't stay out late performing. I couldn't even practice properly because Maya needed me. So I gave it up. I gave up everything I ever wanted to be so I could take care of our daughter. Our daughter, David repeated softly. My daughter, Elena corrected firmly. Maya doesn't know about you. She thinks her father was just some guy who didn't want to be a parent, and that's the truth, isn't it? David felt like he had been punched in the stomach. Elena, if I had known, you would have what? Married me out of obligation? Paid child support while you built your empire? Don't pretend you would have been a good father back then. You were too selfish. Elena was right, and they both knew it. The young David had been selfish and ambitious and completely unprepared to be a father. But I've changed, David said desperately. I want to help now. I want to be part of Maya's life. Elena stood up abruptly. No, absolutely not. Elena, please. She's working 3 jobs. You're sick. Let me help you both. We don't need your help. We've survived this long without you. But Maya deserves better than struggling to pay for your medicine. She deserves to go to college, to have opportunities. She'll have opportunities, Elena said fiercely. Good ones that she earns herself. She doesn't need a father who shows up with money and thinks that fixes everything. Elena headed for the door, then turned back one last time. Stay away from us, David, I mean it. Maya has a good life and I won't let you mess it up the way you messed up mine. She walked out of the cafe, leaving David alone with his cold coffee and the weight of 20 years of regret. Through the window, he watched Elena hurry down the street, probably rushing back to work at the flower shop. David sat there for another hour, staring at his ring and thinking about the daughter who didn't know he existed, and the woman who would never forgive him for the choices he had made when he was too young and stupid to understand what really mattered in life. Maya noticed the changes right away. It started small. An envelope from the electric company saying their bill had been paid by an anonymous donor. Then the pharmacy called to say someone had covered her mother's medicine costs for the next 3 months. Elena tried to act like it was normal, but Maya could see the confusion and worry in her eyes. Mom, who would do this? Maya asked, holding the pharmacy receipt. We don't even know anyone with this kind of money. Elena was washing dishes at the kitchen sink, her movements more tense than usual. I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe it's just a mistake. These things happen sometimes. But Maya knew her mother was lying. Elena had always been terrible at hiding her feelings, and right now she looked scared. The mysterious help continued. Their landlord called to say their rent was paid ahead for 6 months. Maya's school counselor mentioned that an anonymous scholarship fund had been set up specifically for her college expenses. Even the grocery store manager gave Maya a raise, saying a generous customer had requested it. Maya wasn't stupid. Someone was helping them, and that someone had a lot of money. But who and why? The answer came 2 weeks later when Maya was walking home from her shift at the grocery store. She took a different route that day because construction had blocked her usual path. As she passed a small cafe, she saw her mother through the window. Elena was sitting across from a man in an expensive suit. Even from outside, Maya could see that her mother was crying and angry. The man looked familiar, but Maya couldn't place where she had seen him before. Maya moved closer to the window, trying to hear what they were saying. She couldn't make out the words, but the man's voice sounded urgent, almost pleading. Elena kept shaking her head and wiping her eyes. Then Elena stood up suddenly and walked toward the door. Maya quickly stepped back into the shadows as her mother rushed past, heading in the direction of the flower shop. The man stayed at the table, staring down at his hands with a look of complete defeat. That's when Maya recognized him. It was the man from the hotel, the one she had spilled water on. The one with the musical ring. Maya's mind started racing. This man was helping them financially, and he knew her mother. But Elena had acted like she didn't know anyone with money. Why would she lie about that? Maya made a decision. Instead of following her mother, she walked into the cafe. The man looked up when she approached his table. Recognition flickered in his eyes, followed by something that looked like panic. "You're the girl from the hotel," he said quietly. "And you're the man who's been paying our bills," Maya replied, sitting down without being invited. "Don't deny it. I know it's you." David stared at her, seeing Elena's determination in Maya's eyes, but also something else. Curiosity instead of anger. "How did you figure it out?" he asked. "Lucky guess. My mom never keeps secrets from me, but lately she's been acting weird. Then I see her crying with a stranger who happens to be rich enough to pay all our bills. It's not hard to connect the dots." Maya studied his face carefully. "The question is why? Why are you helping us? And why does my mom look like she wants to kill you?" David felt trapped. Elena had made it clear that she didn't want Maya to know about him. But now Maya was sitting right here asking direct questions that deserved honest answers. "It's complicated," he said finally. "I'm 16, not 6. I can handle complicated." Maya's directness reminded David so much of Elena at that age. Fearless and unwilling to accept non-answers. "Your mother and I knew each other a long time ago," David said carefully. "Before you were born." "How long ago?" Maya pressed. "About 20 years. Maya did the math quickly. "So, around the time I was born?" David nodded, his throat feeling tight. Maya leaned back in her chair, studying him with the same intensity she used for her hardest homework problems. "My mom never talks about that time in her life. She gets sad whenever I ask about my father." "Maybe you should ask her about it," David said, though he knew Elena would be furious with him for having this conversation. "I'm asking you," Maya said firmly. "Were you and my mom together back then?" David looked into his daughter's eyes and felt his resolve crumble. She deserved to know the truth. "Yes," he said quietly. "We were going to get married." Maya's eyes widened. "What happened?" "I made the biggest mistake of my life. I chose my career over her. I thought success was more important than love. And now you're guilty, so you're trying to buy your way back into her life." Maya's bluntness stung, but David admired her ability to cut straight to the heart of things. "Maybe at first," he admitted. "But it's more than that now." "What do you mean?" David took a deep breath. This was the moment of truth. "Maya, I think you might be my daughter." The words hung in the air between them. Maya stared at him, her face going through a series of emotions. Shock, disbelief, anger, and finally something that might have been hope. "That's impossible," she said, but her voice was shaky. "Is it? Think about the timing. Think about why. Your mother gets upset when you ask about your father. Think about why she's so angry with me." Maya was quiet for a long time, staring at the ring on David's finger. Finally, she spoke. "She wears one just like that," she said softly. "On a chain, around her neck. She thinks I don't notice, but I've seen it." David's heart pounded. "Can you describe it?" "Silver with musical notes carved all around it. She only takes it out when she thinks I'm asleep. Sometimes she cries when she looks at it." David closed his eyes. Elena had kept their engagement ring all these years. "That ring matches this one," he said, showing Maya his hand. "I gave it to her when I asked her to marry me." Maya stared at the ring, then looked back at his face. "You really think you're my father?" "I know I am," David said gently. "I can see it in your eyes, in the way you talk, in your determination to take care of your mother. You're exactly what I would have expected our daughter to be like." Tears started forming in Maya's eyes. "Why didn't you want me? Why did you leave?" "I didn't know about you," David said quickly. "Your mother never told me she was pregnant. If I had known..." "What?" "You would have stayed." David thought about the selfish, ambitious young man he had been. "Honestly, I don't know. I was different then. Selfish, immature. I probably would have been a terrible father. And now? Now I would give anything to be part of your life. To help you and your mother. To try to make up for all the years I missed." Maya wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Mom's never going to forgive you, you know. She spent my whole life protecting me from getting hurt by people who abandoned me." "I know," David said sadly. "She has every right to hate me. But maybe..." Maya hesitated, then continued. "Maybe if you proved that you've really changed. That you're not going to disappear again." "How do I do that?" Maya looked at him with a maturity that reminded him painfully of all the years he had missed. "I don't know yet," she said. "But I want to find out who you really are now. Not the person who left my mom, but the person you became after. Maybe if I can understand that, I can help her understand too." David felt a spark of hope for the first time since Elena had walked out of his life. "Does this mean you want to get to know me?" he asked. Maya nodded slowly. "But we have to be careful. If Mom finds out we're talking, she'll never trust either of us again." "So what do we do?" Maya smiled, and David saw Elena's mischievous spirit shining through. "We're going to have to be very, very sneaky." For 3 weeks, Maya and David met in secret. They would text each other using a fake name Maya had given him, Uncle Robert, in case Elena ever saw the messages. They met at different places each time. The library, a park across town, even the food court at a mall where Maya was sure her mother would never go. Maya learned that David wasn't just a rich businessman. He was funny and kind, and he listened to her in a way that made her feel important. He told her stories about her mother when they were young, about how Elena would sing while she cooked, and how her eyes would light up when she talked about her dreams of becoming a famous musician. She was going to be a star, David said during one of their meetings at the park. Record labels were already interested in her band. She had this voice that could make you cry just by humming. Maya thought about her mother's arthritis-twisted fingers and how she hadn't sung in years except when she thought Maya couldn't hear her in the shower. "Why doesn't she sing anymore?" Maya asked. David's face grew sad. "Because taking care of you became more important than her dreams. That's what good mothers do. They sacrifice everything for their children." Maya felt a mix of guilt and love. She had never thought about what her mother had given up for her. During their meetings, David also learned about Maya. She was incredibly smart, getting straight A's while working 3 jobs. She wanted to be a teacher someday, to help kids who came from difficult situations like her own. She loved to read and had taught herself to play piano by watching videos online. "I wish I could hear you play," David said. "Maybe someday," Maya replied, but they both knew that would mean telling Elena the truth. The secret meetings were getting harder to hide. Elena kept asking Maya why she seemed happier lately, and Maya hated lying to her mother. But she also wasn't ready to give up her relationship with David. For the first time in her life, she had a father, and despite everything, she was beginning to love him. Then, David had an idea. "What if we could give your mother something she's always wanted?" he asked Maya during their meeting at the library. "Like what?" "Her music back. Her dreams." Maya looked at him suspiciously. "What do you mean?" "I've been doing research." 3 of the guys from her old band are still musicians. They've actually done pretty well for themselves. And I found out that the record label that was interested in her band 20 years ago still exists. So? So what if we arranged for her to perform again? Just once. To show her that it's not too late to be the musician she always wanted to be. Maya was quiet for a long time. She can barely hold a coffee cup some days because of her arthritis. How is she going to play an instrument? Maybe she doesn't have to play, maybe she just has to sing. Maya's eyes started to brighten. "You think you could really arrange something like that?" "I think I can arrange anything if it means making your mother happy." David spent the next 2 weeks making phone calls and pulling strings. He contacted Elena's old bandmates and discovered that they had never forgotten her. They were excited about the possibility of playing together again, even just once. The record label took more convincing, but when David explained the situation, without mentioning his personal connection, they agreed to consider Elena for a small recording contract if she could prove she still had her talent. David rented out a small music venue for a private performance. He arranged for professional recording equipment and even had a local newspaper agree to cover the event. Everything was planned perfectly. There was just one problem. Elena had no idea any of this was happening. "How are we going to get her there?" Maya asked. "Leave that to me," David said. David called Elena at the flower shop where she worked. "Elena, this is David," he said when she answered. "Before you hang up, please listen. I told you to stay away from us," Elena said coldly. "I know, but I have something for you, something that belongs to you. I don't want anything from you. It's not from me, it's from your past. Your bandmates want to see you." Elena was quiet for a long moment. "What are you talking about?" "Tommy, Luis, and Kevin. They've been looking for you. They want to perform together again, just once. They're at the Blue Moon venue on Friday night at 7. They'll be there whether you come or not, but they're hoping you will." Elena's voice was shaky when she spoke. "You had no right to contact them." "Maybe not, but they have a right to see their friend again." David hung up before Elena could argue further. Friday night came quickly. Maya told her mother she was going to study at a friend's house, then rushed to the Blue Moon venue. David was already there, looking nervous in the back corner. At 6:45, Maya wasn't sure Elena would show up, but at 6:58 the door opened and Elena walked in. She looked around the small venue with confusion. Her old bandmates were on stage, setting up their instruments, just like they used to 20 years ago. When they saw Elena, their faces lit up with genuine joy. "Elena," Tommy called out from behind his drum set. "We weren't sure you'd come." Elena walked slowly toward the stage, her eyes filling with tears. "I can't believe you guys are all here." "We never stopped missing you," Louis said from his keyboard. "The band was never the same after you left." Maya watched from the audience as her mother reunited with her old friends. Elena's whole face had changed. She looked younger, happier, more alive than Maya had seen her in years. "We thought maybe we could play together tonight," Kevin said, holding out a microphone. "Just like old times." "I don't know if I can," Elena said, looking at her twisted hands. "It's been so long." "You don't have to play an instrument," Tommy said gently. "Just sing. We remember all your songs." Maya felt someone sit down beside her. It was David, but she didn't look at him. She was too focused on her mother. Elena took the microphone with shaking hands. The band started playing one of her old songs, and slowly, carefully, Elena began to sing. Her voice was different than it had been 20 years ago. It was deeper now, rougher around the edges from years of keeping quiet. But it was still beautiful. It was still full of the passion and pain that had made her special. As Elena sang, Maya saw her mother transform. Her shoulders straightened, her eyes closed, and she lost herself in the music the way she probably used to every night on stage. This was who Elena was supposed to be. The song ended to loud applause from the small audience that had gathered. Elena opened her eyes and smiled the biggest smile Maya had ever seen on her face. "That felt incredible," Elena said into the microphone. "I had forgotten how much I missed this." Maya looked over at David, and for the first time she saw him, the way her mother must have seen him 20 years ago. He was watching Elena with so much love and pride that it made Maya's chest hurt. "Thank you," Maya whispered to him. "Thank you for letting me try to fix things," David replied. On stage, Elena was talking to her bandmates about maybe doing this again sometime. She looked happier than she had in years. Maya stood up and walked toward the stage. It was time for the truth to come out. "Mom," Maya called out, "there's something I need to tell you." Elena looked down at her daughter with curiosity. "What is it, sweetheart?" Maya took a deep breath and looked back at David, who was walking up behind her. "I know who my father is," Maya said, "and I think it's time we all talked."